Welcome to Exploring Santa Cruz, a bi-weekly program on KSQD 90.7 FM. I'm your host, Mathilde Rand, and my guest is Liz Pollock. Our topic is spring cocktails and mocktails and more. But let me introduce my guest. Liz Pollock has owned and operated the Cook's Bookcase since 2007, specializing in unique books and ephemera on cookery and wine. She is the author of the book The Lost Restaurants of Santa Cruz County, one in the series of The American Palate, published by the History Press in 2020. Liz is also a member of the BCC, the Book Club of California, the IOBA, the Independent Online Booksellers Association, the CHSC, the Culinary Historians of Southern California, a sustaining member of the JLSJ Junior League of San Jose, and the James Beard Foundation. Liz is a certified mixologist. She and her family live in a restored 1914 California craftsman's bungalow in the beautiful coastal town of Santa Cruz County. Welcome, Liz.
Mathilde, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
In your book, Lost Restaurants of Santa Cruz County, you cover 5 decades from 1940 through 1980. Tell us a little bit about the restaurants and why you wrote the book.
It's a really good question because I was first researching World War II and rationing and how that affected people's cooking. And what I learned, and I learned a lot for this project, was how restaurants had to cope with rationing. Generally, they received about 30% more of flour and sugar and meat and so forth, but they really coped, and it was their stories of survival that I found fascinating. And then also, for my book, I wanted to keep the criteria to be mom and pop restaurants. There's no...
franchises?
Correct. And I learned a lot about the families. I interviewed almost 80 people, and I covered about 200 restaurants.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. I had a good time, and I started interviewing people in the style of oral history, rather like Studs Terkel. And my friend and my boss, Leo Stephanie, who passed away, unfortunately, I interviewed him a lot, and he remembered so many of these great stories. So,
I read through the book,
mm-hmm.
and you are interviewing everyone. The cooks, the waitresses, the owners.
Right.
Did you interview any clients?
Some of my favorite stories were of people who, their first job was working at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they started out in the summer or like after school, in high school, and whether they continued in the restaurant business or it was just a step, a platform, right. Something else. You learn a lot of the pressure, the time, cash register, and meeting people, greeting people, and working together as a team. I think that lends to working in other jobs as well.
It was a good training ground. And I'm sure there were, like now, a lot of students who are working in the restaurant and either continue with that or just use it to get money to study.
Oh, sure. I'm going to correct myself. I think it's a fantastic career to have, especially if you are a born cook, if you love to cook. If you go to a culinary academy or culinary school, they teach you all of the little fine points. I went to American Bartender School in San Jose, mm-hmm. and I was the first female to do that in the San Jose area. And they train a lot of bartenders for cruise ships, for instance, and for large hotels. And it's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Now, your first job as a bartender was at
Adolph's on Water Street, and I was fortunate to be hired by Barbara Alufi. She's Barbara Carmelini Alufi. I worked there 5 years. I met my husband there. I met lots of good friends, and that also was a stimulus for me to write the book. I was interested in the whole notion of purveyors and these people who come to the restaurant, mm-hmm. who they come in the morning, they know if you need onions, They've got some ideas for maybe seasonal linens like Bertau's. They knew what was happening. Certainly the meats. This is before the big box stores.
Right.
So the purveyors would come to the restaurant. And
what I find interesting with the book is you cover 5 decades through 1980, from the 40s through 1980. But then you have this whole chapter about the purveyors.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating to me is what you just told me before we got on air, was that there is still a purveyor here who still goes to the restaurants.
Exactly. Stagnero's Fish. He was wonderful to talk with, and they provide the freshest fish to all the local restaurants, up to UC Santa Cruz, definitely. There's also a bakery in Watsonville, because my book covers Watsonville as well. Paulino and his rolls, oh my goodness, it's so incredible. And I was going to say that I brought my props in for you.
Well, before you do that, I want to tell the listeners that Liz has been so kind to bring us 2 copies of her book, and I tell you, it's fascinating. And so if you call in to 831-900-5773, we have somebody stand by, and then the third caller will get the first copy of the book, and later in the program, I'll do it again. But I do see right in front of me your prop. Tell me about it.
Well, the first thing I want to show you is a small up glass. It's like a martini glass or Manhattan glass. And this was manufactured by the Libby Glass Corporation. I'm a big fan of glassware and the history and what goes on. You could order 6 of these, made in the 40s. This was the original size of a martini. So remember that an ounce is just 2 tablespoons. That's it. So if you have, say, a martini glass of today or Cosmo, this is perfect for like a lemon drop or something like that, that if you have an ounce of vodka in there, the rest is juice. So if you're paying $18, $19 for a lemon drop at a fancy restaurant, you're mostly getting the juice and maybe crushed ice or something. So I just want to show you that.
So that glass would be filled with vodka?
And vermouth and everything. I'm just showing the comparative, the sizes, right? And then, of course, the champagne flute, which is so pretty, and then the lowball glass, and that's what you would serve a Mai Tai in. And I brought you a list of the mocktail recipes that I put together for you.
Okay, good. And this is the mixer?
Oh, this is a cocktail shaker, and again, made by Libby. There's some kind of cornball illustrations on the outside, and there's some recipes on the outside. I mean, it's just something that...
This must be a very old mixer.
From the 40s.
From the 40s?
Fun. For my book, the 15 cocktail recipes that I included, the 3 per decade reflect the decades as... Well, maybe I can begin by saying that I collect vintage restaurant menus and also vintage cocktail lists. So I can see in the decade what the restaurants promoted. You know, it's a rum drink or a cocktail, and then like in the 70s and 80s, vodka really pushed its way out, and then tequila, of course. But in the 40s and 50s, it's rum and vodka.
Interesting. So you just mentioned yourself, which I found immediately in the book. There are 3 cocktail recipes at the end of each chapter, 5 chapters, 1940s through 1980. Is there a difference in what kind of cocktails people would drink during different parts of the year?
Sure. I love that you've asked that, because during the holidays, I mean, that's where you really want to work in a restaurant, because people tip. I mean, I don't discuss tipping in my book because that was like a hands-off subject. But boy, the parties and the banquets that I worked, that's what you live for. And the generosity of the patrons who you've served all year round, and now it's holiday time. Like, for instance, realtors and business associations who hold their banquets, for instance.
And so during the holidays, you serve different kind of cocktails than you would do in spring. I mean, we're in spring right now. Tell me a little bit about what kind of spring cocktails would you serve?
Yeah, exactly. Well, like for the holidays, or an après-ski cocktail, it would be hot toddy or like something that with whipped cream, like a cinnamon sort of a kind of zippy.
Yeah.
For the spring, I prepared this cocktail thing or mocktail rather, of a mocktail version of a Mai Tai.
Well, let's first ask, what is a mocktail?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, a mocktail is a pretty good simulation of a cocktail, but no alcohol. And in this case of my recipes here, I try to serve something that doesn't have sugar in it.
Oh.
And so I use get a really good honey. A little pricey. I'm kind of a cheapskate, but I don't hold back on my honey. Yeah. And good fresh juices, like fresh lime, fresh lemon. And, here we live in the fruit bowl of California, right? We were fortunate to have all these wonderful citrus trees. So I've got a Mai Tai, and which you can substitute. You don't have to use rum. You can substitute a little bit of bitters. I'm not going to name names, but maybe 3 shakes or maybe half a quarter teaspoon, a little bit or a capful of almond extract, and that lends a lot to the tanginess of the Mai Tai.
So I see you have a Mai Tai, a mimosa, and a cosmopolitan, and they're all mocktails. They have no alcohol in them.
Exactly.
And they just taste so good?
They're delicious. They really hit the spot. And I wanted to say that bartenders are used to this. They're not forcing you to drink gin and vodka. And in fact, my whole deal is this. You can create a bar in your own home. Just repurpose one of the cupboards in your kitchen and make it fun. Collect some weird glassware. Have various juices. I use plain seltzer to kind of zip it up. I insist on fresh ice. Make it myself. I have those weird molds where you can make an ice cube that look like roses and diamond rings. Oh, they're awesome. I forgot to bring that to show you. To make it fun, and can skip the whole going out to a restaurant and ordering a $18 martini, and you can entertain in your own home.
Not that you don't want people to go to restaurants, of course, because we don't want to lose more restaurants.
No, good point. Right.
Okay,
good.
well, I'm going to take a little break here to remind people that they're listening to Exploring Santa Cruz on KSQD. KSQD. My name is Mathilde Rand, and my guest is Liz Pollock, and our topic is cocktails and mocktails and more. And it's time for you, listeners, if you would like to have, now that she spiced it up a little bit and that you are really interested in these cocktails, besides all the interesting stories that are in there about the lost restaurants, it's time for you to call 831-900-5773, and the third caller will get the second copy of her book called Lost Restaurants in Santa Cruz. I am very fascinated about your exhibit called Rare Kitchen Appliances Instruction Manuals. Tell us about that.
I'm a kind of a crazy collector, and of course, being a bookseller, I deal with ephemera all the time. And I'm not talking about the recipe booklets, but I'm talking about the appliance manuals, and they are little booklets and brochures, and they came in the box. The earliest one I have is from the 20s. So it's really 100 years, 90 to 100 years of 75 types of appliances, including toaster ovens, refrigerators, all kinds of stuff. Like, for instance, a gas refrigerator. Pretty interesting. Yeah. It was manufactured by the Servell Corporation, and they were a division of the Nash Kelvinator division and car company in Detroit. And they made these gas refrigerators, and they campaigned it to be quiet because there's no, moving parts, but rather a small bottle of gas that the serviceman would come in replenish that every month or so. And the bottle was full of sulfur dioxide.
Oh my gosh.
And then later it became Freon, which was banned not too long ago. But there were refrigerators. There were no shelves in the door. Right. And so the Shelvador, which was produced by the Crosby manufacturer in the 50s, I mean, that was a big deal. The self-defrosting refrigerator was a big deal in my family. And that meant you didn't have to have a whole bunch of towels on the ground.
I remember.
Of course. I think it's an appropriate time that we look at these appliances because, local and state government agencies are kind of analyzing the whole utility laws for newly built homes, not right now in our homes, but newly built homes. And I know the restaurant associations they want to keep their gas, for sure. Mm-hmm. But this exhibit I've got about 135 of these booklets, and they're ordinary booklets, but they're on exhibit at the prestigious Book Club of California in San Francisco up until June 30th, and it's free. It's right on Sutter Street, right around the corner from Chinatown, 3 blocks away from Union Square. It's an opportunity to see how these appliances have been featured in our American lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said there is an exhibit?
Yes.
And it started, I think, April 3rd.
April 3rd.
Through June.
June 30th.
So all of those booklets are there, and there, I assume you have around it some information for people that...
Oh, yeah. I'd be happy to send out my free invite. I can mail anybody any of those invites, and I also brought in like a standing mixer from the 1951 that was my mom's, and the beaters are all like bent and beat up. It's kind of funny to see that. I brought in this particular hot dogger manufactured by Presto. It was never used, so it's mint. It's kind of fun to look at. And, a hot plate that's electric, and the salt and lean, mean, fat grilling machine that was, in my estimation anyway, one of the most important appliances that was ever made. Because you could cook for yourself. It was portable. It was still manufactured. Grilled cheese. In a dorm room, for sure, it helped.
I see the description of the exhibit, from air conditioners to yogurt makers.
Yes.
Kitchen appliance manuals with step-by-step directions for achieving a desired outcome are incredible examples of early technical writing and innovative design. The instruction manuals on display reflect a wide range of products aimed at American consumers and provide today's bibliophiles and graphic artists the opportunity to study the typography, designs, and color combinations of product marketing from the past. It's a whole science.
Oh, definitely. I also include a list of American appliance manufacturers, and I have about 105 that are listed. Of course, they become gobbled up by, say, Admiral was gobbled up by Whirlpool, which then became a division of Maytag, et cetera, et cetera. And some of these are still in business. Some of them are not in business any longer. But I focus on the labor of appliance stores, the appliance repairman that you ask them to make a house call to help you. Maybe they can fix it. Maybe they say it's not worth it. Go get a new dishwasher.
Well, in the meantime, the phone has been ringing off the hook. I have here 2 people. Jane, I won't say the last name, but Jane, you are definitely getting a book, and I'm going to ask her receptionist if she please could call you back so she can get information on how to get the book to you, and maybe you can come to the station to look at us. And I think I just get the impression that yes, she's coming. The other book is going to Eva, and we will get some more information from Eva. So we have 2 books given away, and of course you gave me one also. I can tell you, listeners, it was very interesting reading the book, and I probably will use it as a reference.
I'm glad to hear that.
Because there's so much history in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Santa Cruz history. I mean, that's why I'm doing Exploring Santa Cruz. And so, but I did not know that there were that many restaurants that disappeared in Santa Cruz. But let's go back to your exhibit. What is the best part of the exhibit in your mind?
I think all of these appliances on the kitchen counter, whether they're on the counter or below in a cupboard, they're teaching elements. If you learn to read, frankly, they're complicated recipes. Some of these directions for the microwave, when it first came out in the early 70s, there was only low, medium, and high. There wasn't any preset buttons of potato or pizza or anything like that. There wasn't a carousel, a circular glass plate.
Right.
You were on your own, the timing and all that. And my family didn't have a microwave. We were scared about it. We finally got used to the notion that the actual wave isn't going to hurt you. Well, you kind of get used to this new language. And so the safety precautions are a teaching source. I don't think putting together, say, a barbecue rotisserie with all the little nuts and bolts and the racks and the spits and the trays and so forth, that teaches you this sense of accomplishment that, yes, I can put that together. Awesome. And I've really enjoyed collecting these. I like the design and then the notion that some of these illustrations have furthered the women's lib movement, don't mind me using that phrase, because it's a sense of accomplishment that we can do it.
Mm-hmm. I want to tell the listeners that if they want to contact you about your travels, and we'll talk about it in a moment, and your work, that they can contact you at info@cooksbookcase.com. So it's info@COOKSBOOK and then case, CASE.com. That's how they can contact you.
Yes, anytime.
And I know from my communication with you, you're on it right away. So we have a few moments for your final thoughts. And tell us a bit about your travels.
I wanted the book to be about the entire county of Santa Cruz. So I went up to Davenport and I interviewed the McDougals that had the Davenport cash store. And that was totally amazing. I really enjoyed that. I went all the way up to Boulder Creek and covered all the restaurants up there, including Scopazzi's. I went all the way down to Aptos and to Watsonville. And oh boy, Watsonville. What a fantastic place for restaurants. And some of them are gone, but we can still learn from their courage of staying and surviving. That earthquake was really something. And so the big chapter of my book all about how did they survive. The community came together and they agreed, with the pavilions and the food pavilion and so forth, downtown Santa Cruz, they agreed that shopping local, buying local, and in this case, supporting a local radio station is really important. Well, I wanted to put that plug in there.
And of course, that's really nice of you. Okay, so you have 30 seconds. Any final things that I didn't ask you that you really want people to know besides supporting K-Squid?
Being a restaurateur, working in a restaurant is a wonderful occupation. You can learn a lot and you can showcase your own talent. I encourage young people to go in for it and get
some of the experience that you had.
Exactly.
You really created a whole community around everything you've been doing with restaurants and with these rare collections, kitchen appliances, manuals. It sounds so fascinating.
And meal preparation is so great. It's great to look at old vintage menus to see how they did it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Liz, for being here. We, of course, ran out of time. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Exploring Santa Cruz. Until the next program.